Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the process of retopology inside of Maya. This is used for optimizing assets that the topology is not going to work within a game, either because of constraints within the engine or just simply the fact that the asset, like the one that we're looking at here, is just too high poly. So what we're looking at here is a version of Cappy. This was extracted from the game, and I actually went into ZBrush and manipulated the topology. It was already low poly and in game ready, and so what I did was to bring it inside of ZBrush and kind of mock up a faux high poly, if you will. So getting to the point that this thing actually looks um, like it is the high poly. So this is what we're going to be doing, is retopologizing this. It's a fairly simple asset here, and the reason that I'm looking to retopologize something really simple is that there really is only one tool inside of Maya that we really need to pay attention to. And as geometry gets more complex and as the models get higher poly and have more detail on them, it doesn't change the complexity of the tool. It just changes the amount of time that it is going to take you to retopologize the asset. And so for that reason, I'm going to work on something fairly simple and give you the ability to kind of understand how the tool works. Okay, step number one, we have the geometry in the scene here. And my goal is going to be to make this object what is called a live surface. Now, a live surface inside of Maya allows the geometry that we are going to create for our low poly to be stuck directly to the surface of the model. This is done by heading up to the toolbar and using the little magnet icon. There's a whole series of these in here. So these are your snap tools. And the one that we're interested in is all the way on the right, which is live surface. Make the selected object live. When I do this, you're going to see that it's no longer selected. I can't select through it anymore. I can still select it from the outliner if I do need to select it. And you're going to see that it changes its object color when I do this. Now, with the object being live, I now have the ability to go in and start creating some geometry. I'm going to turn off my grid so that when I look at this from underneath, it's not obstructing my view. The one and only tool that we're going to use here is called Quadra. And this is it here, located inside of the modeling toolkit in the very bottom right. And when I turn this on, we're not going to see anything appear or change on the hat. It still looks exactly the same. We've only just enabled the tool. The idea is that I can now go and click 4 times, creating the shape of a square. And these are proto-vertices. These are vertices that are not quite yet vertices. In order for them to become vertices, I actually need to create a polygon here. So I'm going to hold Shift on my keyboard and just place my cursor over that little area. And when I click, you can see it becomes this little blue polygon. Now that it is a blue polygon, you can see that we have a new poly surface in our outliner. That is what this object is. You'll notice that that polygon is stuck to the surface, which is good. And I have the ability to go and do various things to this. So first, if I place my cursor over the polygon, it becomes red. And this allows me to click and drag and move it anywhere on the surface I want. It's always going to stay stuck to the surface. I can all do this with an edge here as well. I can grab a singular edge and move that wherever I like. And I can do this with a singular vertex as well. Grab a vertex and move it along the surface. So I'm not holding any shortcuts or anything here to do this. I'm just highlighting the object so that it turns red and then clicking and dragging. The next tool that I have at my disposal is to use the Tab key on the keyboard. Now, if I hold the Tab key down, you're going to see that I get a little green triangle that follows my cursor. And this is what's called a quad strip. And if I click and hold, it'll start creating a strip wherever I drag my mouse. Now, this isn't overly useful for this particular model, as it's just a very small string. And we do have some settings over here that will allow us to create larger and larger quad strips. So if I go and turn that up, hold Tab, you can see that I can actually create some fairly large ones. Now, in some cases, this is actually a fairly quick and easy way to start topologizing your model and give you some pretty decent topology. But in this case, I'm not going to use that tool. Now, another thing worth pointing out while using the Quadra method is that when you do have a strip of quads here on your model that were created using the quad strip, Each polygon is its own undo step, which means to get rid of these two bands of polygons that I created, I'm going to be hitting Control Z a lot to kind of undo them. So I've always found it to be a little bit easier, instead of undoing, to delete. Now, the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to hold Control and Shift. And as soon as I place my cursor all over the model, I'm going to get this little yellow outline. This is very similar to the red one that we saw with nothing held down. Yellow is the shortcut for delete. So if I go and hold over an edge, I can left click and that edge disappears and the model will flatten out against the surface again. If I do this on a face, the entire face will disappear. And if I hold it on a long edge like this, an outer border edge, it'll delete not only that edge, but all of the polygons associated with it. So this actually makes it fairly easy to go and delete. The other thing that I have the ability to do, so I'm going to go and move my original polygon down here, is I have the ability to use object symmetry. Now this means when I create vertices like this, when I get my cursor close enough to the middle, they actually snap and become one. This means that for symmetrical objects like this hat, I'm going to be able to retopologize it really, really quickly by doing the same operation kind of on both sides at the same time. This is both going to save time and going to make it a little bit easier to do. It's really reducing the amount of work here that I have to do doing this. So my goal is to figure out about how large I want my polygons. In this case, if you haven't retopologized anything in the past, it can be kind of hard to kind of figure that out. So I'm going to always err on the side of a little bit larger than I want them to be. And I'm only going to then go and retopologize, trying to keep all my polygons this size. Now, it's not going to be always possible to keep them that size. Obviously, the brim of the cap here has a width that is nowhere near this, but I will do what I can in terms of keeping in that size. So I'm going to hold Tab, and this time, instead of getting the Quadra, I'm going to place my cursor on the bottom of the polygons I already have. And this is going to, you can see underneath my cursor, it says the word Extrude. This is going to allow me to click and drag out a new set of polygons. So here, I'm going to bring these all the way to the brim, where it ends, like so. Now, that's obviously not the same size as the polygons that we've already created, but I want to show you another tool that we have at our disposal. If I just hold Control, we get this little green line that bisects the model wherever we choose. And this really works best if you're nearest an edge. As soon as you start getting kind of near another edge, it'll jump around on you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this so that the polygons on the top of the hat and the ones on the brim are about the same size. And I'm going to click, and this is going to create new polygons. So this has gone and cut our model, taking what was a really large set of polygons and made it into smaller ones. Now you can also Control Shift and remove these edges. I'm going to remove them for now because I believe it's actually going to be faster to retopologize the entirety of the cap's brim and then put those edges in. And so I'm going to go and follow the brim down. Now, one of the things that I'm doing is trying to keep my edges perpendicular to the surface here. So when I get to where this corner is, I'm trying to make sure that my polygons don't go off in weird angles. And I'm also still trying to keep my polygons pretty close to the same size. Again, this is not always going to be completely possible, but I'm going to try and do it as best I can. And we'll try and avoid any zigzags in our topology too. We want really nice, clean edge flow here as we go through. From here, I can hold Tab and drag out a single vertex. Dragging a vertex out is going to ensure that it snaps to both of the other polygons that share that vertex. And as I do this, I end up with a really nice flow in and around the brim of the cap. Now I can go and put my other edges in. And then I'm going to begin creating the thickness. Now, when areas get really, really thin on a model, it can become very, very difficult to end up with something that is going to read the right way. And often the topology will try to sink through the model. It'll, while you want it on the surface, it'll try and actually go down into the underside, which is not going to be ideal and definitely not what you want. In that case, what I typically do is just go and delete the polygon, the offending polygon, and I'll recreate it a little bit smaller to try and avoid that issue. Now, I've got a little bit of an issue here where I'm a little bit rounder in this area than I think I need to be, or I'm a little bit denser in terms of the polygon count here than I think I need to be. And so I'm going to go and space these out a little bit further, trying to keep these edges, again, all about the same distance from one another. This is going to give me a little bit more of a rounded shape through here. And again, the more I can do that, the better it's going to reproduce the curvature of the brim. And so I'll move this over, move this over, move this over. And again, just trying to kind of reduce how pointy that looks. At some point, though, it's going to be inevitable that we get polygons that are not to our liking. Okay, I'm going to go and drag the underside down now. And I'm going to bring these back. You can see that the cap goes a little bit, the brim goes a little bit further on the inside. And so I'm going to go and match that. And this is eventually going to end up inside our plumber's head, which means we won't really have to worry about it too much. So I'm going to go about here, and then I'll place my two new edges on here. And we can go and weld this together. I do believe I went one too far. So I'm just going to delete those. Now, when you get vertices close enough to one another, they will automatically snap. And this is denoted by a little hourglass symbol, indicating that those vertices have become one. They've kind of welded together and are now forming a new shape. So if I look at the underside here, I can see that my edges, my flow is not as perfect as it could be. Well, this allows me to show you the next shortcut key, which is to hold the shift button down and then just paint on the surface, or just drag your cursor along the surface. What this is going to do is it's going to use the relax tool to start to soften the distance between these edges, trying to naturally make it as close to the same edge length wherever it can. Cool. So with that, I'm going to move up and up and up. I'm going to go all the way along the top of the hat here. Again, trying to ensure that these polygons stay about the same size. Don't need any really big, large polygons here. I don't need any really small polygons. And I'll bring this all the way down until I hit the bottom. At which point, this is also going to go under here. And I'm just going to bring this into the halfway point of the underside. So that looks decent like that. We're going to have a little bit of an interesting issue here where the brim starts going around. And I think I may actually leave a thin row of polygons just at the very border here, just here, which is going to allow me to create a little bit of a softening of the normals in that area. So if I were to bake this, that little tiny row of polygons is going to help things hold together just a little bit more. So here I can see that this is not really being helpful in terms of being allowed to create a new edge in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lift the other one up so that what's behind it is still the outside of the cap. And that should allow it. So same thing is happening here. It's trying to go to the middle of the cap. I'm going to start bringing some more polygons up here too. Then we'll just go and bring this back. And again, my goal is to keep my polygons very consistent in their scale. Again, we'll drag over here till we get that hourglass. And I'll go and fix this vertex. Okay, that's not too bad. I'm going to continue along here. Oops, undo that. And bring this up. And we'll do the same thing here. And across here. Now, sometimes it can be a little bit faster to bring out an entire edge. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you how this works. Right now, our extend mode is set to edge, which means if I hold tab and I click and drag on an edge will get extruded and we'll have a new polygon. We can also change this to loop. And when it's set to loop, if I hold tab and I place my cursor over an edge, it's going to follow that edge wherever it goes. Now I'm going to delete the first and last polygon in that loop, and this is going to allow me to extrude again without getting any polygons that don't belong or aren't in the correct place. And so we'll go and kind of adjust the curvature here a little bit, get this to follow the shape a little bit better. And I will go, let's return this back to edge mode so that I can bridge across this gap. And bridge across this gap. And what I'm doing essentially is getting to a point where I'm going to hold shift here and relax these faces a little bit. I want to get to a point where I just close off this hole. And that's going to give me the shape that I need. So here, I'm going to go and put another polygon like this. And this is going to allow me to close this off. Now, this is not the shape, the end result shape here that I want. Is actually far lower poly on the side. It's not adhering to the resolution that the rest of the cap has here. I'm going to go and do one more polygon out here. And then I'm going to go and add another corner to this. So I'll extrude these out. And again, I know that there's not enough topology here. I'm going to control and add a new edge loop back there. So this can get closed off. That'll get closed off. And I'm now down to a point here where I've got a very small opening in the cap, which is kind of what I want. And the idea is going to be to close this off. So make sure that I have enough topology here that is going to make this make sense. So here I've got 3 edges along the top. You can see that I need to put another edge in here and bridge this across. So here I've got now a rectangle. And I can see there are 3 polygons that make up the top, one on the left and one on the right. That's good. And then only one on the bottom. I'm going to add 2 more edges to the bottom. And that's going to allow me to then seal up this hole. Like so. And what I want to do now, I'm just going to use my relax to kind of soften these shapes here a little bit and kind of redistribute the polygons in a way that is going to keep them all within the same size as one another. You can see that it kind of pulls up the back here a little bit as it conforms to the shape a little bit better. Again, my polygons are really, really dense in the front here. I really don't want to lose that really nice curvature that we're getting in the front of the cap. And then over here, I've got to move these edges along because again, they are not evenly spaced. And so just a little bit of movement by eye here will allow me to get these things to kind of match up a little bit better. Okay, that's not too bad. I need to only now do the bottom of the mesh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring these vertices in until they target weld to one another, because we only do need a singular vertex in the bottom. And I'm just going to, with tab held, drag out another vertex and snap it to the middle. This will ensure that I'm getting triangles on this mesh. And I can see again that on occasion something misses. And so I'm just trying to get that to be as centered as I can. We'll bring these ones out. We'll do the same. And the same. And the same. Now, at this point, I barely even have to be careful because I know that the underside here, we're just going to collapse into a single vertex. And so I just need to get these close enough that they're all in the same area. Like so. Again, I'm going to do a little bit of softening up here just to try and make that shape look as clean as I can. Make sure that I've not accidentally moved any vertices here and altered the shape in any way that I don't want. Okay. And what I need to do now is collapse this down into a single point. So to do this, I'm going to turn off my Quadra. I'm going to go to object mode. I'm going to hit Control 1 here so that we're only looking at our new object. And I can see that it did indeed make a really big mess here because of the speed at which I was making this stuff. So I'm just going to select all those new vertices. And I'm going to go into my Edit Mesh and Merge. And we'll just bring the threshold up until those pop and become a single vertex. And then that's it. Those guys are now put together. The only other thing remaining would be to smooth the model out so we don't get this faceted look. And so I can go into my edges here and select the entirety of the cap. And I'm going to go to Mesh Display, and I'm going to go to Soften and Harden Edges. I can see just a few places here where the topology is low enough that that edge did not quite get softened. And so we'll go and manually soften those ones. And visually inspect this. Again, I can see that there's a corner here. And so I'll go and soften that as well. And then lastly, once this is all done and you're happy with your shape, the only thing that remains to be done is to go in and just make sure that this model is clean. So by clean, I mean we're going to want to freeze its transformation. We are going to want to delete the history on this object. And we're going to want to rename it. So here in the outliner, I'll call it Cappy_low. And that should be good to go. We should have now a really nice clean cap. In fact, there's one more edge here that I think I may want to go and make this one rigid. So harden. And yeah, I think that looks a little bit better. We now have a clear separation of the brim. So I'll just delete the history. And then that's it. I also want to remember to delete the high poly. So I'm going to turn off the object and make it live and delete that. And there is a fully retopologized asset going from really ugly topology down into something that is far more clean and something that is now of game resolution, something that will actually run in a game engine. And so I hope this has been helpful and that you can use this process on just about any model that you have. Provided you're adhering to the shape of the model and what have you. But that is about all I've got for you for today. I hope this has been helpful, and until next time, I'll talk to you later.